Welcome to the Digital Marketing Victories podcast, a podcast about the realities of digital marketing. Listen in each month to learn about the tactics and strategies, soft skills, and technical requirements that go into digital marketing success. I'm Katherine Ong, owner of WO Strategies LLC, an organic traffic consultancy.
And I'm Jim Keeney, owner of Fiddle Web Consulting and founder of DAP, the platform for the engagement economy. Welcome. Let's get into it and celebrate our victories.
In today's episode, we talked to Lea Scudamore. She's a SEO at Aimclear. It's probably an agency you've heard of. It's a leading digital marketing agency and a 7-time U.S. Search Award winner. At Aimclear, Lea is an all-around SEO strategist. She's also leading the charge in digital accessibility, accessible SEO, the web content accessibility guidelines, and ADA compliance for Aimclear's clients. She has this really powerful story to share about why she is so passionate about online accessibility and why she firmly believes SEOs are the most well-positioned to lead the charge. She wants to make sure that websites are accessible to the 1 in 5 Americans with a disability. You should listen to this episode if you want to learn more about how you can add accessibility to your SEO service offering, where you can find resources to fix those issues, and most importantly, how to convince your clients to take action. So without further ado, here's the episode with Lea Scudamore. Thanks for joining us, Lea. Would you be willing to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, I'm Lea Scudamore, and I am the SEO and accessibility specialist here at Aimclear.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you got involved in digital marketing and SEO and how you ended up at Aimclear?
Oh, I fell in love with the web really early on, and I was actually just selling internet. And then I went and worked for a company that built websites, and we built websites for very big brands that have dealerships all over the country and actually around the world. And I always watched Aimclear and what the team was doing, and kind of played this game with the people at the company I worked with, like Marty says, or Mary says, or Manny says, or right, whoever was here and whoever was writing what, when it came to the algorithms and things like that. And I got to the point where I'd kind of gone up the ladder as far as I was going to go, and I wasn't being heard. And I predicted that there was going to be a big change and we were going to have a big traffic drop on the servers. And then it happened. And then all of a sudden they started to listen. But at that point I'd already checked out, and applied at Aimclear and got really excited to get hired, because they were kind of like the Mick Jaggers of paid media and Facebook ads. And I really wanted to learn that side. So I came to Aimclear with the intent of learning the ad sides and becoming more in it up to my elbows. And then got called back to my love of SEO when they needed some SEO stuff done. And then it just kind of took off from there.
And lately, though, you've been kind of focused on accessibility, right? Can you tell me how you got started there?
Yeah, accessibility as an SEO, you kind of know you have to do it, or that you have to do the alt text, you have to do the meta titles, you have to do descriptions, all that sort of thing. But you really don't understand what that means until you have somebody that you love that doesn't have access to what you have access to. So I fell for accessibility because my girlfriend Allie was diagnosed with ALS, and it was a very aggressive form.
Wow.
So they gave her about 6 months to live, and she called us over to have to hang out at our friend Don's house. And so Don and Lisa and Allie and I all got together, and I was super pumped. I thought margaritas were on the way, because that was our typical Saturday would be margaritas and hanging out. And it ended up being her telling us about her diagnosis, and she needed us to do 3 things for her. The first one was to move her mom with dementia to a care facility because she could no longer take care of her mom, sell her house and clean it out and get rid of all the things. And then the third ask was for us to help finding a living facility for her, because they had given her about 6 months to live.
Wow.
And so it was went from I thought it was going to be really fun to being really scary, really fast. And we, in the process of trying to clean her house out and donate things and paint things that needed painting and clean out the garage and all these things, she stopped responding. And it was super frustrating because you're trying to coordinate 50 people to come over on a Saturday and clean the yard and prep it for sale. And she wouldn't respond. It was because she wasn't able to physically use Facebook or Twitter or the things that we had messaged with her all the time. And it was because her devices were mounted at a horizontally.
Yep.
Everything's vertical.
Yeah.
And nothing rotates. So it literally took her from being super connected to everybody to not being able to communicate with anybody.
Wow.
And it went super fast. It was really fast. And so that kind of changed my whole perspective, because I was like, wait, we have accessibility. This is something that should just be done. It's the law. It's been the law for 20 years. Why isn't this working? And you know, there's special systems now that you have to buy when you should be fine with your phone. You should be absolutely fine using your phone. It has everything for everybody. The whole world is in the palm of your hand unless you have a disability. And so I got really frustrated and angry, not only because I was scared of losing a friend, but also because this shouldn't be happening. So I started digging into what accessibility actually means and what it is. And I brought the things that I was learning to my SEO. So now when I think about accessibility, I don't actually think about SEO or accessibility. I think about SEO, and that SEOs have to be accessible. They have to make accessibility the very foundation from where they start, from the way that they name their images to how they build the structure of the website. And yeah, I feel like I feel like I'm crusading around talking about it, but you won't know you need accessibility until you actually need it, or your mom or your dad or your sister or somebody you love does.
Well, and we always say, get close to your customers.
Yeah.
But it's really a superficial catchphrase. This is what we're talking about, right? Underneath it is live in their shoes, understand the way they work. And accessibility is 100% about that. You really have to view the world, the way they view it.
And do you have any sense here in the US about how many people we're talking about that have a disability?
I do. It's 1 in 5.
Wow.
1 in 5 have a disability. And the thing is people think disability and they think wheelchair, right? The thing is that there are more invisible disabilities than there are visible disabilities. And so you really have to be careful, because it affects everyone. Flashing videos, things that move, like that are hard to catch with the mouse, things that are too close together. All of that stuff is part of accessibility.
Yeah, it ranges all the way from a little bit of a tremor to colorblindness. On design side, color contrast is something that every designer gets wrong, it seems.
And they do.
Yeah.
But good ones don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and don't forget transcription. My sister-in-law is deaf, so
right.
There's that community too.
Yeah, there's literally, we could spend an entire hour talking about all of the different things. And the hardest part about accessibility is if you plan for one and you're like, I nailed it, you've missed everything else. So you're kind of in this, just like SEO. I mean, this is why it's meant for SEOs, because we already live in this ambiguous world, right? Yeah. So we already live in the gray zone between black and white. That's really, accessibility as I've been learning about it, that's where the intersection of SEO is like, it's through the ambiguity that you have to kind of get through the muck and make sure that all these different pieces are done.
Well, yeah. And I think that in addition to, handling that question, accessibility impacts the usability of your website to the positive. So, they think of it as a burden, but actually, if you're really focused on the usability of your website, a lot of the accessibility issues get resolved at the same time.
Yeah. One of the things that I keep coming back to is you look at page experience, right? Google, everybody's doing their website for page experience and mobile friendly and the core web vitals. And if you actually look at them through the lens of accessibility, you actually see that those items are accessibility. They might call them something else. They might say this button's too close together. You might be getting council messages saying, hey, these elements are too close together. You might be getting, what's the other one that everybody gets that they're like all panicked about? Just left my brain. but like we're getting console messages
page
from
speed
Google. Yeah, page speed. Thank you. Yeah. So we're getting those things, that all of that is related to accessibility, because accessibility bridges the gaps between a whole bunch of things, from like the economic divide to the physical disabilities that some people have. So it's just, there's a lot. It does a lot of things, but it's all good.
So, since you're an SEO and you're deep in this, what would be your message to other SEOs that want to pick it up? Where do you even get started?
Okay, so the easiest place to get started is through the W3C's website, so w3.org. They have /WAI for Web Accessibility Initiative. Everything's laid out in chapters there, so you can literally go right down the list and learn about how to make a PDF accessible, and how to make video accessible, and how to make content that isn't online accessible, because accessibility applies to your internal systems as much as it applies to your external content, right? There's so
a new word.
words.
I like that word.
Yeah, alternal. Hashtag alternal. But there's like those things, right? Like there's so much of it from that works for the inside versus the outside of your organization. So you really need to make sure that you're taking those things into account, from like making sure images are explained if they're relevant, right? We don't need to know that this one image that's uploaded to the site is the left leg of this person that's walking by, right? Especially if things are ripped apart. But we do need to know that somewhere on the page, there's somebody walking a dog, if it applies to walking dogs, right?
And that's a great example, because when you actually are challenged with that for the first time and you start looking at your page, you go, well, what is that? You have these little icons all over the place. You're like, what does that icon actually do? It does absolutely nothing. It's just there for, to decorate the page. Well, then why do I have to describe it? Hey, why do you even have to have it on the page? And, it's sort of like pages that are designed for conversion. When you look at them for the first time, you go, wow, that's just ugly. But then you realize, no, it's just 100% functional.
Right.
You just said something that set off a light bulb. So you were talking about the fact that internal pages are part of the accessibility as well. And I remember Google's clarification about the page experience update coming through and saying that no index pages were going to be part of the calculation. And as an SEO, my first response was, I told you to not index that darn thing. Why is it part of it? I was so mad. I was like, I told you to not look at it. But that's why.
Yeah.
That's why. I don't know. I just never put two and two together until right now.
And that's the biggest thing, that if you're an SEO and you start digging into accessibility, it's going to be far less of a shock to you, because you're just like, damn it, now I got to take my vitamins.
Yeah.
I have to do the meta titles. I have to do, because you'll actually understand how it affects the rest of the world. Right. Yeah. So that part of it is a little bit of like coming home of the things that you put on the side, or it's also, that is the perfect way to start building a case study to get your clients to get on board, because lawsuits are out there and they're coming fast and furious. I think 2018 to 19, they doubled. Wow. They slowed down a little bit because court wasn't in session over 2020 because of the pandemic. But I doubt that that's going to slow down, considering there's a large amount of money sitting out there, because you can't actually fight it, because the laws in the US, they're using the W3C's content as the guidelines to determine whether or not your site is accessible. So like everybody knows about Domino's, right? Everybody knows that Domino's tried to go to the Supreme Court and they were just like, sorry, we're out to lunch. You didn't do your job. They didn't even hear them. They're like, we're down at the pub. So that's what you're actually dealing with, is you're making sure that, one, you're doing it because you're a good brand and you have social responsibility to do it. But then two, you don't get sued. Yeah.
Well, and you don't miss 1 in 5 Americans. There's that too.
Right. That's a huge, think about revenue, right? There's so many, out of the websites in the US, and say like US and UK, right? 70% of websites are not accessible. Globally, it's 90% of websites.
Oh my God.
Right. Right. And so let's just think about the UK for a second, just because it's always top of mind for me right now, because of Brighton was just a few weeks ago. 279 billion pounds of spending power are in the pockets of people that are disabled in the UK.
Hmm.
That's an astronomical amount of money.
Yeah.
And a lot of brands want to sit there and say, oh, but they're not our clients. They're not our customers. They are your customers. They are buying things for their children. They are buying things for their siblings. They're buying things for themselves. But, you know, it's like they eat, they breathe, and they shop, and they have a wallet. That those should be the things that qualify somebody as a customer. To make you work on your website, to make sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to shop your site or to visit your website's brands, your website, and get to know your brand.
And it's pent up demand. So first in leaders are going to establish the kind of bond with their customers that they're desperate for. So they're all out in that marketplace, you know, trying to find the greatest influencer to get them the 0.01% increase in their market share in brand recognition, when in actuality, here's this huge chunk of people that have pent up demand that are not being addressed, that are not being reflected. And
they have friends.
Exactly. They have friends, and they have people like you who have helped them, you know, sell their house. And, you know, and it's not an opportunity as much as a necessity.
It is a necessity, and it's not going to slow down. Google's going to continue to update. And if you look at the updates that Google's been making with Core Web Vitals, page experience, mobile friendly, because mobile friendly in this essence is really just making the thing fast, right? It doesn't really matter that it's on the website or on a desktop or on the, you know, a cell phone or on desktop. It means fast, and fast works for countries that are developing too. Right? Because they need fast, lightweight, nimble little websites that are going to do what they need to do so that they don't bounce. It's the same thing. So if you look at everything that SEOs have been talking about and banging pots and pans over forever, these elements that we're going through and talking to our clients about, they all line up to be accessibility. And it's with it not going to slow down. Google has been working with the W3C for years, right? We know this. They've talked about it. Both brands have. It's going to keep growing. And so you can either pay for your website right now and fix it for Core Web Vitals as it is now, and fix it for page experience as it is now, or you can go the full shoot match and do it right away and be ready when the next steps come. Because retrofitting accessibility does not work. There is not a plugin out there that will make you accessible. There are plugins that make things easier from a colors perspective, as far as like making things, you know, making your, instead of having white, thank you. I lost the word, but you know, so you've got black background versus white background, bigger font. There's things like that make things easier for people that have sight, but that is not going to address all the other options that are things that we need to do out there.
So how do you, I'm curious, how do you build, it's not so much build the case, because say you've got a client that's a little laggard about planning for the future from an SEO perspective. I think of some of my federal agencies I used to work with, where, you know, you kind of wait until it's like a big algorithm hit before maybe you get moving. So if you're an SEO on board, how do you estimate the lift to kind of let them know that they need to get started early, because it's going to take forever? Because I have a feeling this is going to take forever. It just feels, I don't know. I've been an SEO for like 17 years. So it feels like a lot of work on top of everything.
Well, it is a lot of work, and SEO is a lot of work. The best thing about it is that you can measure it through the same channels that we've been measuring with for SEO, right? Analytics, Search Console, your SEO tools. You'll see lift in traffic from an organic perspective. And the hard part is the ROI, right? They want to see dollars, because you're not necessarily going to be able to tie every single dollar that happened because of accessibility. So that part of it is really, that is the hardest part. But if you are seeing an increase and you've been doing all the right things, and you see a lift in revenue, and the only thing that you can tag out is that, you know, we started making sure every image has tags, and the tags are relevant if they need it. Otherwise they're nulled out, right? And we're using the keyword that goes with this page that makes this page this relevant to it. So you'll see that sort of thing. John Mueller just did a big video in one of their lightning talks about images and the use of images. If you're an SEO, you have to watch this video, because if you look at that and then you think about accessibility, it's literally telling you how it's going, like what's next, because we know that Google is moving towards a more image-focused search results. We see it when we do a search for, I saw it when I did a search for shopping in London. The very first result above the map pack, where you normally think you're going to see like what's nearest me, the very first result was the meta title, a bunch of images that applied to the search result showing different shops, and then the meta description. So those things that's where you're going to see, where you should be able to measure lift, is if you're making updates to your titles and your descriptions and making sure that they speak to the user and that they're not sitting empty or duplicating the same one through the entire site.
But even before that, how do you tell them where they're at? Like, how do you grade the site? Are you recommending that SEOs add all the accessibility into their audit? Like I go to the feds and I say, you're only 50% there, or even though they're supposed to be 508 compliant. But
there's multiple extensions, right? There's multiple extensions. But the first thing you can do with a client, we're going to do let's talk about testing, right? That's what we actually want to talk about. How do you test your site? The very first thing you can do is go to your website and use your tab button to try to use your site, try to make a purchase, try to fill out a form, try to go through to different pieces of your site, get to the gallery, go through the images, those sort of things. Like that's first. If you can tab through your site, use your arrows through your site, you're doing great in some respects. So, that's one. There are so many sites out there that you go to try to tab through to complete functions that it's an e-commerce site, but due to pop-ups, you can't get to the final step to check out, right? So see if you can, using just your keyboard, put your mouse away, try to do it, right? Try to do the things you want people to do on your site, like the top 3 things you should know within those. The other thing you can do is there's multiple extensions for Chrome and Firefox and etc. that I use one called Web Developer. Horrible name because it doesn't distinguish it from all the other web developer ones, but it's just a little gray cog. And you can go in, shut off all the CSS, shut off all the images, shut it all off, and see how it lines up. Is everything in the right order? Or is the navigation in the right order? Some people will add a page to the site, but they don't actually take time to update the navigation. Yep. And then it ends up at the bottom of the home page, right? Even though it's like number 6 or 7 visually on the navigation. Yep. So the person looking for it or tabbing through, trying to get to it, has to go through the entire page before they find that page link to be able to get to it. So doing that, removing all the CSS and taking a look at the site, making sure things are in the right order, that's very, very helpful too, because that will be the read order. Use things like Vox, listen to your site. There is nothing more painful than listening to your own site when you're trying to navigate through. If you feel like there's cheese graters in your ear, you got to work on your site, right? Like those are some of the other things. There's really great tools like Wave, which is done by the W3C, that you can pull up a page or pull up one of your page templates. So if you have a blog or if you have a product page or the home page or contact us, pull it up, hit the Wave extension button, and it will show you contrast errors, where you're missing headlines. I did this to Coca-Cola's website and they don't have an H1 on their homepage. Yep. Right? And they didn't have alt text or anything on their logo. Yep. Right? So like these are basic things that they should do. And it's just a quick oversight, but somebody just grabbed the file that didn't have the meta description or the alt text. Yep. Like those are some things. I looked at if you want to look at a site that's really working hard, a brand that's really, really working hard, Unilever is working very hard accessibility. They are a great example if you want to look at some stuff. The W3C also has different pieces of ARIA that you can use to help make your site more accessible and work that into your site with the different templates that they have put together for you. There's so many resources, and I have a list on the Aimclear blog. I did a guide to accessibility, like it's beginner's guide to accessibility. It'll take you through the basics. It'll give you links to different tools and different Chrome extensions that I've used to try to help brands understand where they're at.
Do you end up, I'm just kind of wondering, one of the, something similar in the SEO space, which I've seen, is when you're trying to do something simple, like get everybody to use UTM tracking correctly, right? Because it goes across the entire organization.
It never goes wrong.
Right, exactly. You see it go wrong all the time. And I was very impressed. I was working on something for CMS, and there was a GA, I wish I could remember which firm it was, but it was a GA certified firm. And they had created a guide that everyone, which literally laid out every type of marketing thing. When it's billboard, use billboard lowercase, and when it's email lowercase, etc. And shipped it around clearly the entire organization. I'm just wondering if you do something similar to when you're actually trying to get the organization to implement it, stick with it.
Yeah, I'm really, really fortunate that the CEO, Laura Weintraub, is 100% on board, as is Marty, the founder. And then our CTO, Joe Warner. I'm super spoiled because I have these really great forward thinkers that I work with. And when I first brought this to them, I was like, this is something I'm interested in. This is what I want to learn next. Like, I understand SEO. I've been doing it for, 18 years. I really want to figure out this part of it. They were like, yeah, go do and train us. So as I've been going through and getting certifications or learning different things or watching conferences or attending conferences, I've spent a lot of time coming back and teaching as much as I can to the team. So we did Fridays right after lunch. We did a half hour every Friday where we just took a section of the W3C's website and went through the accessibility guide, or the WCAG, right? Yeah. Web Content Accessibility Guide, the WCAG. We went through that, and we started with chapter 1 and we went right on through. We went through as much stuff. And then when we were going through that and taking that half hour, we had, the CTO, the designers, the developers, me, the SEO. And there were a couple other people that we pulled in because we wanted to make sure that they were on board too. And we would have this meeting every week. We'd screen share and show everybody what we were doing, talk it out. And then every single week we had really great discussions because somebody would have an aha about something they were working on, and they would talk about what they were struggling with. And then one of the developers would know how to fix it. And we had these other things that also ended up being problem solvers. So it was basically just a stand-up meeting where we just talked about this one piece of the thing of the WCAG for the week, and watched videos that we could find, or watched videos that the W3C posted that it shows you how people are using assistive technologies to access different parts of the site. And that made things more clear to the team. So at that point, everybody kind of started marching to the same beat, and that made it a lot easier. So, but it was time.
So that's for your agency though. What do you recommend for your clients? Well, it might be too early because I know you're this is somewhat of a new thing, but I'm just kind of thinking like you hand over the recommendations, you try to get them to implement them, but then somebody builds a new page over here or an entire subdomain. Like,
I'm sorry, I can't let that go. This is not new. I was fighting this battle in 2000. So.
Okay, yeah,
right. Right. This isn't new. No, so with clients, it's the clients, what we've been doing is clients get SEO accessibility. It's not one or the other, it's together. And that it's accessibility is also being handled with dev. So it's coming from both sides, and we're working together on each site as they go. If I see things like gray font, I swear, gray font on a white background, gray font on a black background, the contrast is rarely, and Jim, you know this, it's rarely meets the criteria needed for people to actually be able to see it. Yeah. So I bring that up. Yellow font on a white background is not going to make it, right? I don't care if it's your branded colors, you still need to be accessible. So black font's preferred. It's like a 20-1.
So it's not because I'm technical, it's because I'm 59 and
glasses. It's fine. Gray hair glasses.
It's not only glasses.
I'm with you.
It's now lighting, it's glasses.
It's lighting, it's glare on screens. Yeah. Everybody's mobile. Everybody. Gray font on a white background. Nobody can see it in sunshine. Everybody does that. You guys have both done it. I know you've done that. Hunch you over, make yourself a shadow thing so you can see your screen. we shouldn't have to do that. People should be building websites that you can see regardless if it's sunny or if it's dark.
So I'm still stuck on the lift here. Sorry. I get a little obsessed about this because
drilling into
because I'm real big on trying to raise issues that people should be focused on. But getting them to find the budget and like commit, and I know there's lawsuits, but like still like getting them to actually get going, I think is a big deal. Well, and then I also work on these sites that have got, I mean, mind you, they're academic journals, some of them, but they have like just millions of pages, many of which have images, many of which don't have alt text. So if you get someone to commit, say like I do an audit of a Fed site, they're not 508 compliant, shocker. They've got like a section that's not up to date or whatever. Yeah. How do you scale it? Like, how do you tell them to get, because, you know, I can't tell the 3 government employees that are like super max to the nines, you know, and then I run a solo consultancy. So how do you actually get going on fixing it?
That's good.
Oh, and then the other question is, I know you can read you've got guidance online, but I have my sister-in-law and her fiance in my head. That's not deaf guidance necessarily. And you're talking about, I do a lot of YouTube work, right? So what is the extra stuff you might need to figure out? And do you need to actually talk to perhaps somebody who's disabled to get you over that finish line?
That would be ideal. And that is probably the hardest part right now. There are vendors out there where you can have your site tested by people with various types of disabilities, and you can get basically an audit back. I don't have a favorite right now. And I don't have a go-to where I'm like, this is it. This is the magic bullet. And having websites that have thousands of pages and have a very small crew behind it running the business, like it is not easy. It is not going to be an overnight thing. It is going to be a thing where you either start today and you move forward, right? Yeah. You can start, everybody has websites that have pages that aren't being used. So audit the site, start by cleaning house, right? So that you get down to what you actually need. The next step that I would do is when you do that audit and you have the list, you just got to start doing every day. There's been sites where every day I just make sure when I first get to work and I'm still waking up and I'm drinking my coffee, I go through and I add 50 alt texts right away in the morning. Right? Yep. When my head is clear and I've got that before I get into meetings and phone calls and stuff like that, because once you get on with clients, it's not going to happen. It is not easy. There isn't a magic bullet that's going to make everything happen. But it just is something that we need to start doing moving forward. And you can write an accessibility statement that says, hey, we failed here, right? We know we're failing. We're doing what we can to rectify it. It's going to take us a long time. But if you need something, here's an email, a real email, right? Yeah. That somebody can click and they can instantly send you a message saying, this is what I'm struggling with. This is how your site's not working for me, and have that conversation and get them what they need. You have to have an accessibility statement on your site. And before you even start working on your site, that should be the first thing you do.
And you mentioned real email. You mean like,
yeah, no legalese.
Like literally the emails in the code kind of thing, like not a form, not any of that.
Nope, literally an email that will open up their email so that they can email you directly. And it goes to a person, like a real person. So I think ours either goes to, I have to check really quick, but either goes to, no, I know the email that goes to actually forwards to SEO and it comes right to me. So that if somebody has a problem, I know where to go start looking to fix something. You write it out. Aimclear's blog or Aimclear's website has the accessibility statement on the footer in the sitemap. I think it's up in the header. We pretty much put it everywhere where people might be looking for help information so that they can easily get to it and contact us if they need to. And it's written in plain 4th grade language, right? Like nothing really crazy or technical or anything like that. We start going backwards on our images a month at a time. And we've been just keep going a month at a time until we get it done. So from an image perspective, meta description, meta title, headlines, making sure you have H1s on every page and that they're accurate, not using H1s like 9 times on the page because you like how big and pretty the font is.
Never see that. I never see that.
Never? Not once? Literally, my eye will start to twitch when I see a page with like a whole, if you go to go.com, ABC, right? ABC Go, because everything's just pulling from the pages where they've published to the homepage as like the most recent news, it is nothing but H1s. nothing but H1s. And then gray font on a white background.
Of course.
so I ran it through the Wave Chrome extension, and I was just like, oh. I just had to close it. There was just, I couldn't even put words to it, but I used it as an example. Like, don't do this.
Right.
Because it's just horrible. But yeah, I really wish I had a thing like, hire us and we can fix it. It'll be easy in 30 days or less.
Not 30 days or less.
It's never going to be it.
It's very much like all of SEO, though. It's a function of prioritization. What you have to do is first ask the question what you're trying to convey and who you're trying to convey it with and how best to connect with them, and then drive it backwards from there. And, it is the same struggle that you face every time you're trying to decide about keywords and content and what you publish next and who you target it towards and everything. You just have to add this to and that's why it's very much a cultural change, right? You sensitize, you reach out, you sensitize them to the issue, but then, and this is something that Katherine, you're very much focused on, is then you've got to actually handhold them through the process of taking that awareness to actual functional expertise and the ability to execute. Otherwise, what happens is they face it and they don't, you shut them off.
Freeze.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
they freeze.
This is why I was wondering about the focus groups, because you're lobbing over, in theory, a whole set of recommendations, prioritized, of course, but still it's like a spreadsheet of stuff, just like we do it with everything. And I just kind of wonder if the human part might, it depends on who you talk to, I suppose. But if you're talking to the CEO, bottom line revenue probably helps. But for the other folks that are executing, I just wonder if actually getting their customers struggling with it would help. Or I spent a decade in nonprofits, so probably not. I tend to be a little bit more soft-hearted.
Well, and the thing is that we're already in this phase right now. All SEOs and developers are in a phase right now, right? Because Google has stopped talking to SEOs and started talking to developers, right?
Yeah.
We're all in this together. And SEOs are already comfortable in this space. SEOs are the only ones that truly know the intent. Now, if you're a developer, please don't get mad at me, because yes, there are unicorns out there. There are unicorn developers that really understand the customer journey, really understand the different type of customers, where they're at in that journey. There are those developers out there, but SEOs actually are the ones that are tasked with finding intent. And intent needs to be behind all of these things that we're doing, right? When you're talking to your client, if your client can't understand that we need to be nurturing to all people, they need a change of heart. And you can try to get to them with saying 1 in 5 people can't use your website. You can do that. Is that a little bit of a slippery slope? Yep. If you fix your website, are you going to get an instant increase of 20%? No. Will you have a heart that grew like the Grinch's? Probably, because you're doing the right thing. There comes a point where you have to do the right thing. Otherwise, you do have the risk of a lawsuit.
Right.
You have the responsibility as a brand, as an SEO, as a developer, to make sure that your information is accessible to everybody. It's the law.
Do you build out personas that are specific for disabled? I just wonder, because I've never seen one now that I think about it. All the personas are very happy, able-bodied people for every company I've ever worked for.
Yeah.
No, I don't have it broke out like that. I take them at the customer journey and make sure that this journey is going to work for as many people as I can get.
Gotcha.
Right. So it's from the journey perspective, because honestly, I want to make sure that everything we have is available to everybody to the best of my abilities. And we're going to fail because this is new in a lot of ways. Is the information and the requirements new? No, it's over 20 years old. It's part of the law in the UK, right? Like this is a global thing in many instances, but it's not You're never going to one and done it. It's just like SEO in that way. And you just have to keep plugging away. Because who wants to sit there and go have their mom or their friend say, you know, I love your guys' stuff and I really wanted to buy it, but ever since I can't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Fill in whatever it is. Right? I can't use your website anymore. You don't want to get that. I don't want to get that. I don't want to get a letter saying, here you go. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's just settling out of court. There's no fighting it.
And again, you know, I said, this has been on the table since well before 2000.
Yeah. Like 96,
7.
Yeah, it was 96, 7, but they started talking about it in the early 90s, right? They started saying, we're going to be doing these things like in 1990, or maybe it was 89. So this isn't new. And the problem is that nobody's taking it seriously.
Yep.
And the question keeps coming up, like, how do you convince your client? Everybody's worried about the bottom line. Everybody's worried about making the money, right? And growth. If you make the conscious decision as an SEO to not look into this and to learn about this and to put it into your tool belt, if you are a developer and you make the conscious decision, you are making the conscious decision to not make your stuff available to 10 to 15% of the global population. In an age where we're all responsible to get traffic to the site, why would you do that?
Right.
Why would you automatically go, they're not my customer, and chop off 10 to 15% of the global population, or 20% or 22% in 20% in the US and 22% in the UK? Why would you do that?
Well,
that comes back to it. And how do you get your client to do it? I haven't had a client come back to me when I've said, here are the things we need to start doing. Here's why, here's how many people, here's what their spending power is. I haven't had a client come back and say, nope, we're not going to work on accessibility.
Right.
Not one.
Right. Well, and what I keep coming back to is there is a natural flow for how you manage your website.
Yeah.
It's just adding some details to that flow and following through. Again, you know, I keep coming back to, you know, there are 2 tags on every image. One of them says, this is what the image is. And the other one says, this is what the image means. You have to fill them both out, and you have to use radically different language for each of them. And that, you know, it is a thought process. Once you get into that thought process, you're like, oh, I've got to do both labels. And this one is going to say, it's the left leg of a running man. And the other one's going to say, you know, be inspired by.
Yes. And how do they line up when they go through, right? Like, is it in the right order?
Yeah.
And it's not, and we keep saying it's not easy, because it's not, but it is necessary. And it is, you know, it needs to be necessary. You had brought up, Jim, you brought up forms.
Yeah.
One of the things that everybody loves, those neat, clean forms where what you need to put in the cell is in the cell. But once you click in the cell, it disappears.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times I have deleted what I had typed out, or tried to copy and paste it so I could delete it to look and make sure that the format was right.
Yeah.
Right. That sort of thing can't do that. You can't have things disappear on people. Forms can't be timed to time out really fast. Now, there are exceptions, of course, because of like HIPAA and things like that, where some forms in like banking, they need to be on a timer. But people need to be able to pause or stop the timer if they need more time to fill stuff out. It comes back to those invisible disabilities, right? Not everybody can cognitively get through a form as fast as the next person. So you need to give them the opportunity to make those changes too. So if you're going to have a form, and in the form fields, it's going to say the requirements. As soon as that cursor clicks into that field, those things need to pop up above the box so it's still visible the entire time.
Which is the default for material design. So Google is not only helping us in terms of SEO, but their designers have led the way in terms of, you know, and I have this, design systems are moving in the right direction finally.
They are, yes.
And the conjunction of design systems with web components gives you the ability to stop making it up on your own and just grab a component that is already pre-built to do those functions. but then that gets us back to your other point, which is if you take off JavaScript, if you take off CSS, if you take off all these other things, do you still have a plain vanilla form that can actually be filled out?
So taking off JavaScript, like what do you do with clients where they've decided they want to launch a PWA or something pure JavaScript based or all that kind of flashy stuff some folks like to build sites with?
I haven't run into that one yet. I know it's coming, and I know we'll put together a plan with the developers at that point. But right now, I don't have anybody that's like hell bent on keeping things when we know that they're not working. They're looking for what's going to work and move forward from there, and that's kind of where our mindset has been. But I know that that's coming. I just haven't laid out an entire plan for it. I've also been getting a lot of questions like, how do you make a PDF accessible? Because making a PDF accessible is the worldly version of how, like it is not easy. It's very hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
But there isn't a really awesome guide that I've found out there. And I've come to the point where I think I'm going to have to write my own guide of how to make a PDF accessible simply and like from the beginning, because it can be messed up based on what you loaded to the file first. Right. I mean, and then you're hopping all over when you're tabbing through from page 30 to page 2 back,
painful.
Yeah, it's really
so
the TOC table of contents. Oh,
so how do you test that? Like say you got a client, you're wondering if their PDFs are awful.
You can load it into Adobe, and they have an accessibility test that will start you out really quick.
Oh, okay.
So you just click the accessibility thing and have it run a scan, and it will tell you some of the basics you need to get going. And
yeah,
so
there's green checks and red X's.
Yeah, my answer to the PDF question has always been, why isn't it a web page? You're on the web.
Yes, because like, why does it have to be a PDF when we want to download it? Okay, we can do it.
Why are you putting 80-page documents on the web? Nobody reads them. Nobody reads.
I know you read that much. Let's get the Reddit version.
I always get clients that are surprised too that they can't measure their organic traffic to the PDFs. I'm like, well, there you go. Let's put it on a web page. Like,
Right? Yeah. It is really it's something.
Yeah.
But and I'm still learning all the time. I think I'll probably be learning just like with SEO. I'll be an expert when I go to bed. I'll be a student in the morning because everything is new. It's yes, Google changes all the time, but the true north is the intent of the client or the customer, right? The intent of the customer, intent of the user, like that's your true north. If you can, adopt that to accessibility is making sure that, the true north is we're trying our best to make it accessible for everybody. Are you going to fail? Heck yeah. Is that part of living? Yup. You just got to keep rolling and growing.
Yeah.
You're such an SEO.
You do.
You are. You're true blue SEO. You're like, you mess up sometimes. We're always learning. It always changes too. It's okay. We roll with it.
The thing is, our number one job of any salesperson is education, right? Any salesperson and SEOs, we're no different. Number one job is education, true north of the user intent, and making sure that the content is, the big aha at the beginning and not drawing it out like we used to back in the newspaper in article days. We got to make them really fast and easy to chew through. So it's the same thing.
Which also answers one of your questions about JavaScript, which is the people who are at the kind of the front of the field are actually going back a step in technology. And what we're doing is using JavaScript to generate static pages and then pushing those through our content CDNs, through our content delivery networks, because that answers the other question, which is page speed. So the plainer that page is, the easier, faster it loads. Doesn't matter what the device is, et cetera, et cetera. So so that's kind of the other, the more advanced tools out there in terms of content management and building your website and everything are now generating static pages and then delivering the static pages. So PWA, I have no answer to. It's a really cool technology, though.
I mean, because you were talking about showing a website, and I distinctly remember, this is years ago, mind you, but Nike had a Flash website, and it used to be my example all the time. I'd be like, look at this blank screen, wonderful blank screen, you know.
How many digital agencies had a website that was essentially a movie that just slowly transitioned over and over again and looked really cool, but was totally unusable?
Totally. Yeah.
I know.
We won't mention any names.
We've outgrown that. We've outgrown Flash.
Yep.
We'll outgrow not being accessible. We'll get there. We just all need to start thinking about it. And that's the number one goal, is to just get SEOs thinking about it and hopefully inspire them to take ownership of it. Right?
So,
because we need that intent. We need to make sure that the right intent's there and that there's an image selected and on the page for a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the thing. So that's my biggest goal, is I feel like if I keep talking about it, then maybe your best friend won't go through what one of my best friends went through. Yeah. You know, your mom won't go through it when my what somebody else's mom is going through, being totally disconnected from. And also kind of to call out Facebook and Twitter and the social channels that aren't making it easy, right? And it's hard to tell. Is it the phone platform? Right? Is it the platform of the phone, or is it actually the social network? But there's if you do go into your favorite SEO tool and do a keyword research for like Facebook, and then filter out all the keywords that have or include horizontal, right? Mm-hmm. There are 145,000 people every month globally looking for help to use their Facebook on horizontal screen. Mm-hmm. That shouldn't be a keyword. Those shouldn't be keywords. Yeah. It's not as big for Snapchat. It's not as big for Twitter. But by not making these things rotate, like I said, it could be the phones, it could be the app. But by doing that, they're losing customers. They're losing people that could be very active and having a social life online, like all of us have like clung to over the last year. You know, they're losing in that spot. Those are people that aren't seeing ads. Those are people that aren't shopping online. Those are people that aren't. And you don't want to be that. You don't want to. Your brand doesn't want to be that way.
Well, we're disconnecting a large segment of society from, things that we have come to make part of our central living experience.
And even more tragic, because during the pandemic, all of us have been much more hooked on online shopping, connecting with our friends online. I mean,
video, Zoom, right? I mean, everybody's been on those Zoom marathons. You go right from work Zoom into the social hour Zooms.
Yeah.
Right? your camera starts to glow red. It hasn't been pretty, but we've gotten through it. Accessibility is empowering to everybody when they can get to it, right? Accessibility makes everything online empowering for everyone. And that's the goal.
This has been amazing. I'm so glad you came on to talk to our listeners about accessibility. I, met you in the Tech SEO Women's Group, and I was like, oh, she is hot. She is hot. We need to get her on. This is good.
Her camera glows red.
Yeah.
It was so disheartening. And it was so much sadness, and she deserved better. Yeah. My friend deserved better. Your friends that need accessibility, they deserve better. And so SEOs, we're loud. We make noise. We do these things, and we have the podium to make noise and make this a thing from social to websites on the web, right? Like, we've been doing it for years. It's not outside our norm. I keep pointing it back that it's already what we're doing. Yeah. We just need to make sure we're doing it for everybody. Not the other 4 out of 5, but 5 out of 5.
Yeah, if you can make somebody do microdata, you can make somebody do alt text, right?
Yes, and there's so many good people out there that are really great at it. You know what I mean? And so there's resources. I'll put up a page of all the people to follow about the different things, because there's I know a woman that is outstanding at alt text for accessibility. And I'll go right down the list and say, here's who I would talk to if I was stuck. And then you can follow their stuff and see how they do things, and you'll learn from them, and it'll make it easier. And then you do have to teach your clients, but
excellent.
It's the world we live in.
That's perfect, because I was going to ask you what resources you are willing to share with our listeners. So everyone will have to go to the episode page. We're going to have links there.
Yep. I'll give you a list of who I follow and what they do. And so you guys will have it, because I want to tell everybody everything. Right. Like, I'll tell you who and where and why and how.
So how can people follow you and learn more about you?
Twitter and LinkedIn. If you hit me on Facebook, you're gonna get a lot of kid pictures that are from my mom and my mill. So and the sills and the bills. So that's where I do that stuff. But LinkedIn, I'm always sharing my stuff. Twitter, I'm on quite often. If you want to message me, follow me. I'll follow you back. We can DM. It's fine. If I don't know the resource, or if I don't know it myself, I know who does or where to find the resource to get you the right information. Get you hooked up with our dev team if you're concerned from the dev perspective, because they are fantastic and they're wonderful doing audits, and they don't just say, here's the issues. They actually say, this is what we're going to do. So it's they're a great team.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Lea. This has been fabulous.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
Thanks so much for listening.
To find out more about our podcast and what we are up to, go to digitalmarketingvictories.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please, if you like what you hear, spread the word. Rate us, comment, and share.
We're always looking for new topics, ideas, and guests. So if you have suggestions, please go to our website or email us at questions@digitalmarketingvictories.com.
And thanks for listening.